What's up, beautiful ladies? Dr. Emily Kiberd here. Today, we are going to dive into why you still have belly bloat despite going free and taking your thyroid meds. Let me know if this sounds like you. This might resonate on a very deep level. I know it did when I was first diagnosed with Hashimoto's. You've cut out the gluten, the dairy, maybe even the processed foods. You still wake up feeling bloated. By the end of the day, you look like you swallowed a balloon, or maybe you're 6 months pregnant. Like, what gives? Today, we're going to dive into the culprits behind belly bloat that go way beyond food sensitivities. And trust me, this is something that most doctors miss when it comes to healing with Hashimoto's. We are going to focus on H. pylori, which is a bacterial infection, highly transmissible in the stomach, how this can lead to slow stomach acid and why that can affect and drive up your thyroid antibodies. We're going to focus on SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. If these words sound like a foreign language, it's okay. I got you. We're going to talk about why eliminating gluten is not enough. There is tons of research around why to eliminate gluten. But if you're still having belly bloat, despite eliminating gluten, there could be an underlying root cause. There could be one of these infections driving inflammation in the body, driving your TSH up, driving your thyroid antibodies up, and preventing you from fully healing, fully feeling like yourself, fully feeling like your best self. So if this episode resonates with you, I've got something big coming up next week, next Tuesday. It is my Gut Masterclass. And normally this is a paid masterclass for $27, and then it gets bumped up to $97. And this time around, we're going to do it for free because so many women need this information. We'll go deeper into how to heal your gut, beat the bloat for good, how to test, not guess. You know, I'm a big test, not guess girl. How these gut infections could be the driver of your Hashimoto's. And so instead of chasing after hormones, more thyroid hormones, more HRT, if you address things in this episode and the things we're going to talk about in this Gut Masterclass, thyroid hormones could come back into optimal range, into balance. I'm going to drop the link in the show notes. Go check it out. It's free. It's 100% free. So if you just show up, digest, learn, get more information, you can then start to ask better questions. I'm a big believer that the better questions you ask, the better answers you get. So if you go to a doctor's appointment and you're not getting good answers, but you don't know because you aren't asking the right questions, this is where frustration compounds. I'm such a big believer that education is empowering. All right, so let's break it down. This myth of just go gluten-free if you have Hashimoto's and all your bloating will magically disappear. Well, cutting out gluten can be helpful, 100%. There are so many research articles showing that gliadin, the protein found in gluten, can lead to leaky gut, that there's actually testing you can do with a GI map that can look at gliadin antibodies. Is your body creating antibodies to gliadin, the protein inside gluten? But just know cutting out gluten can be helpful, but it's not the whole story. And so many women with Hashimoto's still feel bloated because food sensitivities are only a little piece. It's like the tip of the iceberg in terms of the healing Hashimoto's puzzle. And really, the bigger issue is gut dysfunction. So today we're going to cover 3 hidden gut infections that could be causing your bloat. And if you're like, aren't you going to talk about this in the masterclass? We are, but I'm going to give you a little snippet today so that when you come to the masterclass, you're not like, whoa, this is like a foreign language. You've already heard some of the terms. You will have already heard some of the language. And when you come to the masterclass, you'll be like, oh, okay. Oh, this makes even more sense. Oh, yes, I get it. So the first one I want to address is H. pylori. H. pylori, Helicobacter pylori. And we're going to start with this one because this starts high up in the digestive tract. It starts in the stomach. It's a bacterial infection that burrows. Think of it as like a little spiral. It burrows into the stomach lining and will lower our own stomach acid production. Why does that matter? When we eat food, we need our stomach acid to break down the food so that as the food is going through the intestine, it's not going through as these big chunks and making it really hard for the rest of the digestion to happen. The stomach acid breaks down the food. Stomach acid also helps kill off things we don't want in our gut. Bacteria, viral load, all the things. So why does H. pylori cause bloating? H. pylori, this bacteria that burrows into our stomach lining, can slow our digestion. It creates this overgrowth of bad bacteria. Some of the symptoms might be burping, acid reflux, bloating after meals. Those are like the most common signs. So anytime someone comes to me in my one-on-one functional medicine practice and they're like, I'm burping, I get some reflux after I eat, I get bloated after I eat, on to the differential diagnosis goes H. pylori. Some of the signs would be chronic reflux or GERD, nausea, burping, feeling full even after like the smallest meal, a history of stomach ulcers. So in a very small percentage, H. pylori can lead to peptic stomach ulcers, even stomach pain. And then in an even smaller percentage can lead to stomach cancer. So it is so important to rule out, to figure out, okay, do I have this? Is this inside of me? It is highly transmissible. You can get it from kissing someone, from sharing utensils, from going to a restaurant and they don't wash their utensils properly, and the person who used the spoon before you had H. pylori and now there's H. pylori on that spoon. It can even be passed. There's an article that came out recently showing that H. pylori can get pushed up into the air if someone did a number 2 and flushed the toilet and your toothbrush is in near the toilet, and then those H. pylori particles that are aerosolized go up into the air and get on your toothbrush, you brush your teeth, and now you have H. pylori. Gross, right? So here's how you test for it. There's different ways. There's a stool test called a GI map. There's a breath test, and there's a more invasive test, which is an endoscopy with a biopsy. That last one is the gold standard. I think it's a little invasive. I like to use a GI map to check for H. pylori in the clients I work with. How do you address H. pylori? You can use herbs, supplements like mastic gum, DGL, licorice root. And then there is also a conventional treatment of 2 antibiotics and a proton pump inhibitor. These supplements are a longer treatment, 60 to 90 days. The conventional meds, shorter treatment, 10 to 14 days. There's different reasons to choose one or another. That's another conversation for another episode. And then because H. pylori decreases our own stomach acid production, sometimes we need to help support that stomach acid production with some betaine HCl or helping produce digestive enzymes by either taking digestive enzymes through a supplement or something to help produce our own digestives, like a little bit of apple cider vinegar 10 minutes before you eat. So if this is you, I'm burping out of nowhere. I have some reflux, some GERD. I get bloated after meals, even if they're itty bitty. You will want to address H. pylori. And why is this important for Hashimoto's? There's a lot of research out there showing that women with Hashimoto's are more susceptible to an H. pylori infection because we have low stomach acid. I have seen in my personal practice with clients that when you address H. pylori, energy comes back, brain fog lifts, fatigue goes away, bloating goes away, thyroid antibodies come down, thyroid labs come back closer to an optimal range. And we didn't really do anything else. We didn't touch thyroid hormone. We didn't touch any sort of medication. We just addressed H. pylori. So there is a big interconnection between the two. Number 2, hidden root cause of belly bloat. We're going to talk about stomach acid. As you heard, very closely related to H. pylori. But when stomach acid is too low to break down food, this can lead to gas, bloating, and fermentation of your food. If food sits in the stomach too long, which can happen with Hashimoto's because thyroid hormones, when they are underactive, make everything slow down, including our digestion. When food sits in the stomach too long, like food's not moving through our digestive tract quick enough, fermentation happens. Gut bacteria starts to eat that food for a longer period of time. And then we get fermentation, which leads to gas, which leads to bloat. This can trigger this slowness of the food, slow motility through the digestive tract, can trigger a bacterial overgrowth called SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. Can also lead to malabsorption, the inability to absorb the nutrients from the foods that we're eating. So here's some signs that you might have low stomach acid. Bloating or fullness right after you eat. Signs of undigested food in your stool. Chronic iron and B12 deficiencies. So how do we start to address this? A little bit of the Band-Aid approach, but is still necessary, would be two things. One, chew your food thoroughly, eat slowly. Put yourself in a regulated nervous system state before you eat. I know this is very challenging for the mothers. I'm a mother, where your kids are like wanting to sit on your lap. They're fighting during dinner, and you're just like, oh my God, can I just eat in peace? But it's so important because digestion starts high up. It is a north to south process, as my girl Allison Morris, Food by Mars, says. It actually starts in the mouth, and it actually starts in the brain. So when we are in this calm, regulated state, we chew our food thoroughly to baby mush, 30 to 60 chews per bite. Who does that? Very few people, myself included. And we're eating slowly and we're in this calm state. Digestion is better. Bloating gets better, even with that one little tip. Ways to supplement would be to add betaine HCl, stomach acid, the first 10 minutes we eat. Another way to help produce our own stomach acid to help stimulate it would be apple cider vinegar, 10 minutes before. If you're having any sort of histamine response, like you're living in mold, which 98% of the women I see in my functional medicine practice have mold exposure, I wouldn't recommend something that is more high histamine, like a vinegar, something that's fermented like apple cider vinegar. So those would be the two with a little bit of a caveat. And super important, those are a little bit of Band-Aids. You always want to get to what is the root cause driving low stomach acid that's then leading to your bloat. One of those we mentioned in number 1, H. pylori. So going back to 30,000 foot view, top 3 hidden causes of belly bloat. We talked about H. pylori, a stomach bacteria, highly transmissible. Number 2, low stomach acid, potentially caused by H. pylori or SIBO or malabsorption. And number 3 is SIBO, which is guiding you along the path. So SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. What is this? This is a bacteria. This is when our natural bacteria in our small intestine, our large intestine, should migrate into the small intestine. And when there is slow motility, like food is moving slowly through the digestive tract, this can cause fermentation, gas, and bloating. Why is it causing bloating? The bacteria in our gut breaks down food. It can break it down too early, producing excess gas. This gas is in the form of hydrogen or a methane gas. Bloating can get worse throughout the day, especially after eating high fiber or high carb foods. So this is a very key differentiator. If you're eating a high carb food, or you're eating a high fiber food. So I hear this all the time. Women come to me and they're like, oh my God, I get so bloated when I eat vegetables, but everyone says to eat the rainbow, have lots of diversity, eat lots of vegetables to get the fiber, but every time I do, I bloat. A little alarm in my brain goes ding, ding. We got to check for SIBO. So signs you might have SIBO: bloating after you're eating, especially carbs or when you're increasing your fiber, constipation, diarrhea, or both, which I like to call consturia, where you're swinging between constipation and diarrhea. Gas and burping, that is chronic. So those would be some very definitive signs that now you're like, okay, I need to go check for SIBO, this small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. How do we test for it? There is a SIBO breath test. It is a lactulose or glucose test. Typically in the doctor's office, they'll do a 2-hour test where you drink this glucose solution. It's gross. And then you breathe into a bag every 15 minutes for 2 hours. I like to do a 3-hour test. It's a little more sensitive. Definitely don't do a 1-hour test. So how do you start to address SIBO? You can start to do dietary changes, looking into a low FODMAP or elemental diet. There are antimicrobials that you can use. There's also antibiotics like rifaximin. The data shows that about 55% of people who address their SIBO have a reoccurrence, and it comes back again and again. And here's the thing that no one's looking at. There is natural bacterial overgrowth or bacteria in our small intestine. Ask the question why. Why is it in overgrowth? Is it getting put into a place of dysbiosis or unbalance due to a parasite? See that often. Is it getting driven by mold exposure? Those are the two that if someone is treating SIBO again and again, I often say SIBO is a symptom. Get to the root cause. Don't just address it again and again with antimicrobials and antibiotics. That is the Band-Aid approach. Look at what is the driver. Mold, parasites are often the common two. So going back to top 3 hidden causes of belly bloat, it is more than just going gluten-free. It is more than just food. Some of the top 3 causes that we start to look at, and there's obviously more, but I just don't want to overwhelm you, would be H. pylori, low stomach acid, SIBO. And so just know, like, food is not the enemy. If you're still bloated after going gluten-free, your gut health is probably the real issue. SIBO, H. pylori, low stomach acid are all major causes of bloating that are often overlooked by conventional medicine. But, when I work with clients, these are non-negotiables that we look at to get to the root cause of bloat. Because oftentimes we look at our belly, is that adipose tissue? Am I getting a muffin top because I'm fat or because I'm bloated, right? And so sometimes our new norm of, my belly, fat, is actually bloating. And you can actually lose weight just by addressing the bloating. Testing matters. Test, don't guess. Get a SIBO breath test, a GI map stool test for H. pylori. Try a betaine HCl challenge, which I do with one-on-one clients. So if you suspect gut issues, start tracking your symptoms. Write them down. Work with a provider like myself to test, not guess your gut. And then begin supporting your digestion with simple steps like chewing your food, using digestive bitters to your advantage. And if you want to go deeper, join me for the Gut Masterclass next week. It is a deep dive into gut health. We'll go step by step on how to heal, test, rebuild your digestion. We'll talk about belly bloat, how to get rid of it for good. We will also talk about how there's so much more we can do that is outside the conventional realm. More than just get an endoscopy, get a colonoscopy. Yes, those are important. Those are tools, but they're not the only tools. And so to get really clear on the data of what you're working with, it's really a test, don't guess approach, which is what I do with my clients. But we'll talk about this in the Gut Masterclass. Check out the link. The link is in the show notes. Thank you for tuning in. If you found this helpful, educational, inspiring, subscribe, share with a fellow Hashimoto sister. Maybe it's your actual sister because it's genetic. Maybe it's your mama. Anyone who's struggling with bloat. And I will see you inside the Gut Masterclass next week. It is free. Until then, keep listening to your body. Stay strong, and I'll catch you in the next episode.